Hi, welcome everyone. I'm Holly Corbett. I'm VP of Content and Consciously Unbiased, a movement to increase EQ in the workplace. And I'm super excited to have our special guest back with us on the show for a second time, Keren Eldad. She's going to be talking about her second book, Guilt Free, Ditching Your Gilded Cage for Good. Just a little bit of background on Keren. So she's an executive coach who has worked with Olympic athletes, special forces operatives, Hollywood stars, and executives at companies like JP Morgan, Estee Lauder, and Nike. So you may remember us talking to Keren last winter when she had her first book, Gilded, Breaking Free from the Cage of Ambition, Perfectionism, and the Relentless Pursuit of More. So she's talking to us about Guilt Free today. Hi, Keren. Welcome.
Hi, Holly. What a pleasure to be back with you again. Who knew I would be back in a year and a half?
I know you have been busy.
I know.
That's
I
a
know,
quick
but
turnaround.
it really kind of shows you that I had to write this book. I definitely didn't plan to write this book.
Yeah, and I want to talk to you about that because, the first time we had you on the show, it was all about how to redefine success
Hmm.
for yourself. And, this book, which I highly recommend for anybody listening, leaders of all levels, because it's really about, okay, once you've figured out how to define success for yourself, separate from these outside expectations, what does the journey look like? How do you continue to live in alignment day after day? And so, Keren, I'm hearing a lot about this word alignment. What can you maybe share? What does that look like in real life?
So alignment is when you really are living in inside and outside the same way. In other words, your intrinsic values are reflected externally by the way you live, the choices you make, the actions you take, and the decisions that guide your and shape your life. Many people believe that they are in alignment, but they're actually living in a split state where they're actually not living in accordance with their highest values and with their highest desires and with their clearest purpose. And so I wrote Guilt Free after Gilded, which, let's be honest, Holly, was a perfect book. And you and I agreed when it came out was a perfect book because I started to recognize that what people were using the work for and what many people use spiritual work for is to get better, to become more perfectionist, to become more high achieving, to become more aggressive pursuers of success. And unfortunately, that completely defeats the point of the success. The point is alignment. The point is for your life to actually match your insides, to match your values, your desires, your kindness, your harmony seeking, your balance state, not for you to become a heavier hitting hustler. And so
Mm,
that's why I said, all right, listen, I see that a lot of you read Gilded, understood the metaphor of the gilded cage, of making a success ploy in this life that built you a golden cage. My job is not to help you make a shinier cage. My job is to really show you how to break free. Alignment is the state of freedom because you are really not tethered to the extrinsic factors that separate you from yourself. Does that make sense?
it makes a lot of sense. I'm just the question that is coming up for me is, what is the resistance? Why do so many of us fail to surrender to like align our inner world with our outer world? Why is that
Mm,
so hard? What's holding us back?
it's not holding us back. It's actually luring us towards it.
Mm,
Extrinsic factors are very tempting. Success is delicious. Power is even more delicious.
mm,
Once somebody gets a taste of it, it's really hard to break free from it. Really, really hard to break free from it. And it'll catch you. So basically, you'll just become, like most overachievers, a junkie. You'll become
mm,
addicted to success, to external success, to the dopamine hits of getting stuff. And it's really hard to break free from that. That's why I like to say my job is my sale is pitch is very hard to make because
mm,
I'm offering you everything you've ever wanted, but your image of what that is going to be have to change. In other words,
mhm,
you when most coaches make you a sales pitch, they say, "We're going to give you a lot of money and a happy partner and the health that you desire." And Karen's like, "Sure, all of those things, but they're side effects. They're side
mm,
effects. What I'm really offering you is the kingdom of heaven within, the
mm.
freedom." of living your life in a way that is so authentic to you that you feel like this is what you were born to be.
Mm. And you talk and teach a lot about these concepts, but you also live them and you've practiced them for the last 10 plus years. Can you just for our audience members who maybe don't know about your background, can you share a little bit about your own gilded journey?
Sure. And that's actually also how I have the audacity, the chutzpah, to say, listen, I know that the side effects are that you will get what you want, or you
Mhm.
will get the external marker of success that make you super shiny to other people. It's just that you have to go about it in a different way. And if you go about it in a different way, you will get the radically different results. The reason I know that is because I went about it in the regular way when I met you. 20 years ago, you and I were in the same gilded cage that all overachievers find themselves in. We had pursued a career in a linear way after pursuing a degree in a linear way. We had done everything quote unquote right. When you and I met, we were also, I mean, we're still thin today, but like we hadn't eaten in a good 10 years. We had,
Karen, I always ate. I just want to clarify.
okay, so you're very
I
lucky to
love
have been
food,
preternaturally thin. I
but
was definitely under
oh,
eating.
well,
To
just a little background. So Karen met and I met in New York City. I
Yeah.
was working in magazines at Condé Nast. I was the assistant happiness editor at Self magazine, which sadly now is no more. And Karen was at Cosmo in sales, right? Or marketing,
I was in marketing and sales, yes.
marketing and sales. And so we were kind of living this lifestyle in New York in our 20s that, you know, we had always dreamed about. Okay, so I just wanted to
Yeah,
give the
exactly.
background.
So we attain the right degrees. We go into basically the right industry. The publishing industry was super chic at the time, very hot and very prestigious. And we have prestigious looking roles. And
Mhm.
to maintain that, I had a lot of other things, which is why I openly share that I really, really did care very much about my appearance. And I cared very, very much about what I was wearing. And I worked extremely hard to maintain all of those facades. Those facades were A, very hard to maintain, and B, didn't actually get me my goals. They just got me stuck in political whirlwinds of social climbing and career climbing that were toxic and difficult and self-defeating and also had their own natural ceilings. That's also how I ended up getting mediocre results in love. So not only am I getting not the results that I want in my career because my career doesn't light me up and feels like a cage from which I cannot escape, I also end up marrying what you're supposed to marry, which was a tall banker. And it was an abusive, miserable relationship that I also had to maintain or keep up appearances in. And while I think maybe to some people my results may sound extreme because they find something else which is a little more boring, just a regular old lull, it doesn't matter. Many people can relate to the idea of I chased the right things, but I ended up with the results that I didn't want. It didn't feel like what I thought it was supposed to feel like. It didn't end in the stratospheric success that I had imagined for myself. It didn't make me feel like I had hit my potential. I ended up feeling like I was somehow behind or I had missed the mark. And
Mm,
so I wrote Gilded to help you understand why you had missed the mark, how you had built a castle on quicksand, and what would be more terra firma, firmer ground beneath your feet for the second attempt at this, as you hopefully go at it again. And then, of course, because we're overachievers reading an overachiever's book, many people then use the work to just try to create something shinier.
mhm.
And something shinier means you still have not removed the foundation that was shaky to begin with. And so, guilt free is an attempt to show you how I've lived in the 10 years since I overhauled my life. Not just how I produced the first overhaul, but how I've lived since then, really putting
Mm,
my money where my mouth is, really standing in convictions that are new and different, really standing on a foundation of beliefs that support and sustain me, really standing up for my values, and how I've therefore gotten not just those initial better results, but good results in pretty much a nice steady flow since then. Not all the
mm.
time, but most of the time.
So guilt free is really about the daily living, the practice,
Yeah.
the ongoing journey. And what you were saying before is like, it sounds like it just, and sounds like I know too, it takes so much energy to try to be someone that you're not. Like it's just not sustainable, and all that hustling isn't sustainable. And what I like about this, the second book, Guilt Free, is all the practices and the reflection exercises at the end. And you have this framework, gold, and these anti rules, which I love. And so, can you maybe talk about why one of the first anti rules is assume everybody likes you?
Yeah. So the new framework Gold, GOLD, is a series of 4 steps that are basically your new diet.
Mm,
I like to use the very trite analogy. It's a simplistic analogy, but it's still useful. Of when I lost a lot of weight versus the 30
mm,
years since then, where I've kept the weight off. Keeping the weight off is real different from losing the weight. It and it's also in many ways easier because it's about daily practice rather than one time complete deprivation, very, very hard to absorb new habits. This is about the habitual practices that keep you aligned. That's pretty
mm.
much it. And those practices include anti rules, and they're anti rules because they're against your impulses. Just like my impulse used to be have Klondike bar every single day, I have replaced that with don't have Klondike bar every single day. Perhaps replace it with salad every day. Again, very simplistic, very trite analogy, but it will land for people. And the anti rules, there are 12 of them that are housed in Guilt Free, show you how I live every single day, the choices that I make mentally and emotionally every single day that are anathema to my original, my OG impulses. One of my favorites is assume everybody will like you. I, unbeknownst to me, by the way, used to enter rooms bracing for people rejecting me, for them not
Mm.
liking me, for them judging me, rejecting my proposition, disqualifying me somehow. For example, I'd go on dates and kind of hope that maybe they found me attractive a little
Oh.
bit and that I didn't say the wrong thing. Or I'd walk into a negotiation really basically wired to sell them something from the premise that they're very likely to not buy from me. When I
Mhm.
started to flip this premise, and I really encourage everybody listening right now to just try it. Try walking into a room making the assumption that I like me, and therefore most people will also like me, that my proposition is good, and therefore most people will find its value. You will see that your actions and the subsequent results of those actions will be transformed.
Mhm. Can you talked about Jimmy Fallon, and that really
I
resonated
know.
with me. Can you talk about how that role of like, what that role
Yeah, I
looks
give
like?
an example of how this. I always talk about those rules, but then I show you how they've really changed other people's lives. So if you start adopting these anti-rules as your daily practices, they will start to transform your life. And one of the classic examples I give, whether you agree with it or not, hopefully you at least understand what I'm trying to say, is Jimmy Fallon. I say maybe a little sheepishly, Holly, I don't get it. I've never gotten the appeal of Jimmy Fallon. I love comedians. I've been a huge SNL fan my whole life. I don't understand why this guy, other than the Barry Gibb talk show, which was hilarious, is that funny or that talented. At the same time, he has stratospheric success. He has the Tonight Show, like the jewel in the crown of comedy is his. So, how did someone with, albeit if not mediocre talent, then not exceptional talent, get to that? And so I did a deep dive. I listened to Guy Raz interview him. I read a book about Jimmy Fallon. And it turns out that, to my mind, that's his secret. He has
Mhm.
literally always just been comfortable and assumed that people will like him, which has given him an enormous amount of courage. When Randy Siegel, a really big agent, ended up at his school after a showcase calling him, he didn't like freak out about it and self sabotage that that interaction. He was ready for it. He assumed he belonged. He had rapport with her immediately. He talked to her like she was a friend rather than a little kid who was hoping to get discovered. When he gets SNL, unlike everybody else who was really afraid of Lauren Michaels, he went up to him every night and said, "Great show, and thanks for the show. And what did you think about the show?" And soon enough, Holly, he starts getting invited to Lauren's after party table. And that
Mhm.
is how he ends up getting the Tonight Show. He starts to build alliances with people who he has treated with as peers from the very beginning, and they like him. And as a result of them liking him, he's the one that they think of when that opportunity comes up.
I love that. And it's just such a good reminder that the energy that you bring into a room, into the workplace, wherever it is, really impacts how, the outcome. And
Yeah,
sometimes we forget that. I think we're wired to like scan the environment for the negative, but like walking in and assuming everybody likes you, it sounds so simple, but it's really powerful. And you mentioned, Jimmy Fallon feeling like, oh, well, I belong here. And at Consciously Unbiased, we talk a lot about belonging, and there was something in the book that you said, like you wrote, belonging to ourselves is a noble cause. And
yeah.
I loved that so much. What does it mean to belong to oneself exactly?
That's what alignment is. Alignment is not splitting against yourself. Not splitting against yourself. When we hedge against things, and that's what all the anti rules are trying to help you stop doing so that you are aligned with yourself, you belong to yourself first and foremost. And that is a
Mm,
radical act. Self love, self acceptance, standing up for yourself, loving yourself as you are, standing up for what you believe, standing up in your wholeness is a radical act because, again, we are living in a society that stands up for everything else, for all the
mm,
extrinsics, for all the measures that will disqualify you and externally marginalize you. Your job is to not separate yourself from yourself and to not marginalize yourself. Once you do that, you become hella magnetic, really attractive. And that's when things really start to go well. And you have not only an easier path to your success, unlike the linear Sisyphic uh, power grab of my youth, but you also have a very much different, easier, better outcome.
mm. I love that. And I think a lot of it is, not, if you're not fighting about yourself, fighting against yourself, you're better at managing your energy. And I think like the new
Yeah.
focus is, how do we better manage our energy? Not just our time, but our energy, because
Yeah.
that will go far. And I know you work with a lot of leaders in your practice. What are some of the common themes that you see like keep coming up again and again that seem to be keeping leaders stuck
Oh,
either in, their own journey of transformation?
I mean, there's a lot, but the path to success in leadership is not so much about what to do more of, but what to stop doing. And you just brought it up, which is not expending your energy in the wrong way. That's the main thing that's stirring them up. The reason their energy is getting diluted is because it is at the behest, it is the command of everything else, of all the external demands, and it is not starting and originating with you, with your authentic uh, capability and
Mm,
preferences and desires. And unless you bring that back home to yourself, you are not really leading your life. You're being led. Even if you are a leader, you're just being led. And I've met enough leaders who are telling me that they have to do it things this way and they have to answer the emails at 5 o'clock in the morning and they have to work in a certain pace and they have to make this decision where I'm like, are you the leader of the company or are you just like the lowest employee? Because you're talking a little bit like the lowest employee right now.
yeah. And what happens when they stop? What do you see what happens when they stop, for
When they
example,
start to
sending
really
those
make a
emails?
first they make the they start to understand that the reason they are this leader is because they have virtue and value to offer, and therefore their virtue and their value should be at the precipice and at the premise, the heart of everything that they do. Their energetic exchange completely changes. They start to harness that energy and do 80% less of the nonsense and 20% of what actually really delivers value. And that's when scaling becomes possible, movement, momentum really becomes possible, but also when their own peace becomes possible because they've dropped 80% of just nonsense that is not a good use of their time.
Yeah, I love that. So it's not about doing more, it's about doing less, but focusing on what really matters, what's in alignment, what's going to move the needle. As I was reading the book, I kept thinking about this quote that Aristotle said.
Mm,
He said, "We are what we repeatedly do." So
mm.
excellence then is not an act, but a habit. And I know people are going to have to buy the book and do the reflection exercises to really dive deep into the work. But, there was one of the anti rules towards the end was, screw talent, choose consistency. Why is consistency more important than talent?
I love that. I love that anti-rule so much. I love that question so much, and I love that quote so much, Holly. Thank you for bringing that up. We are what we repeatedly do is absolutely right. Guilt free is a Faustian moral fable if you think about it. It's be careful about what you're becoming in the pursuit of success. You can either become a beast and a machine and a shark and all of the bad Machiavellian euphemisms, or you can become the most loving, most wonderful, most genuine, most peaceful version of yourself. And your job is, if you really want a good life, not a financially rewarding life, a good life, then it's to reach for the former and not for the latter. The way to do that is to start understanding purpose and to start understanding um, joy, and to get that those are the product of motion, not the something that will hit you like lightning one day and you'll get very lucky to then pursue it. I think this is a fundamental misunderstanding of success, of purpose, and of alignment. Many people think that Taylor Swift, for example, must have received a blessing from the Lords, who then gave her incredible talent and said to her, "You will go and you will be a great singer, songwriter slash star." And that's not how it happens at all. What happens is she picked up a guitar, she chose consistency, she went after it with all her heart. She repeatedly did that. Then she repeatedly started to attempt to write. She became better and better in writing. Then she repeatedly attempted to sing and to put all of it together. And she became better and better at that. And even to this day, she is simply a repeated creature of discipline. She is
Mm.
repeating the structures that delight her. She writes every day. She runs on a treadmill in times of tour for 3 hours while belting out the entire set. She does that every single day. She is a product, and her purpose is a product of what she is repeatedly choosing to do, not of an ephemeral win or a stroke of lightning or talent that is ephemeral. Jerry Seinfeld, another great example I give in the book, is exactly the same. And it's my hope that everybody understands that real mastery and real excellence are what you're looking for. That's what you're looking for. And they can only be created through choosing something that you like enough to pursue and doing it every single day, rather than hoping for one great moment in the light.
Mm, yeah, that's I love that. That's so beautiful. And I think, as you were talking, what was occurring to me is that so often this inner work that we do impacts the outer world. And like when we look at the workplace, right? Like it's so important for leaders to do the inner work because they are impacting
Oh,
their
yeah.
teams and everybody underneath them. And so we have this concept at Consciously Unbiased we call micro progressions or small action steps that leaders can take. Um, just, do you have any advice on what's a micro progression or small step that leaders of all levels can take to live more in alignment themselves and
Yeah.
work more from a place of alignment? And then how does that impact the larger culture?
Yeah. I do. It's actually from one of my workshops. I don't know if I included it in any of the books, Holly, but it's one that I really think starts to help you to understand what we're trying to help you do here. And
Mm.
it's, for the first hour of your day, live in the 90s. Do not check your phone. Do not read your emails. Do not answer your emails. And oh my God, don't go on the New York Times or social media. For those who are old enough to remember the 90s, there was a time when all of us sat at the kitchen table and ate our Cheerios like a normal person and had nothing else going on but maybe MTV in the background. And oh God, I miss MTV. And what that's teaching you to do is not to alleviate your addiction to the phone. Unfortunately, you're too far gone. There's nothing I can do for you. But what I am teaching you to do by reclaiming your morning, by reclaiming even an hour in your morning, is to stop being reactive to other people's needs before you are to your own. Many people check their phone before they go pee and before they brush their teeth. This is teaching your nervous system that you are at the behest, you are at the service of others before at the service of your own basic functions. No one can get into alignment if that is their level of split. You have to start learning with this tiny micro progression, this micro habit a day, at any point of the day, by the way, if the morning doesn't work for you, to prioritize yourself, because that's the only way you'll start to reclaim that power and even get to a point where you can start to observe what 20% is worthy of your time versus 80% that should definitely be taken off your plate.
That is so key. And again, just such a smart habit. Like for myself, I realized I would get right up and check my emails. And that checking of emails pulled me into a whole other world of doing all these other things besides the thing that I should be focusing on the most. So that's such a good, simple, doable habit. 1 hour to yourself,
Just 1 hour.
just to give yourself that space before you go online, which a lot of people, we're online for 12 hours a day,
Do
whether it's
anything
on
you
our
want. Lie in
computers,
bed. Enjoy your spouse for a second. Hug a cat.
have a
Have a
conversation. Yeah,
coffee. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Um, is there anything else that you think is important to add that I haven't asked you about guilt free, about your journey that you want the audience to know?
I think that Gilded was really about helping people to see the patterns in their way and to help them to mitigate these with patterns that were much more useful to them. Guilt Free is a more brutal book in the sense that I genuinely want you to take this seriously. I don't want you to create more Faustian bargains with the world. I really want you to emerge a diehard for your own freedom, a person who will really accept living in authenticity and nothing else. And if that lands, if that resonates, that's what's going to lead you to a second half of your life being the best part of your life.
Yeah, we only get one life, so let's spend it wisely. Again, guilt free, highly recommend. Alila will drop the link to buy the book in comments. Kieran, where else
Thanks.
can people go, listeners go to find out more about you?
Thank you, Holly. First, there's the Coached podcast that Holly is going to be a guest on very soon. I hope you
So
enjoy that.
excited.
So excited. There's KerenEldad.com. My name is spelled with 2 E's. And of course, you can book a consultation with me if you'd like to speak to me directly anytime.
Oh, well, thank you for being on the show. Congratulations on your second book, such an
Thank
important
you.
book. Everyone in the audience, thanks for joining us. And just a reminder, the first hour of the day is yours. All right, take care. Bye, everyone.